On now to CCR reform, and I did run on a platform of taking back control of council-controlled organisations. In December last year, we agreed to a package of CCR reforms to get council work effectively and give us integrated advice. We've already made these decisions. There are some long and complicated recommendations to make sure things that are in progress don't get derailed. We also have transport reform item updates today. The transport changes the staff are bringing us today are the first steps toward transport's decision being made by elected officials, not by AT. I'll move this. The Deputy Mayor will second this. Toby, are you there somewhere? Can you cover up what the public can expect to see and hear in this reform? This is setting out the ability to be reformed. I'll put the whole thing up. We've added in the bit about transform because we only did that in because it was only yesterday that the AT agreed to make some first steps towards handing us little bits in the expectation that we will go a bit hither referred. So perhaps talk about this and we'll show that the recommendation has had bits there associated with bringing into effect. And I think the CEO would like us to tell us where he's got to as a person we've charged with this monumental task.
Your Worship, I will let the report speak to itself, although Toby's going to run through this. I just wanted to acknowledge that as well as a more general update and some specifics around Eke Panuku, there's a key aspect to do with the Auckland Transport Delegation. I sent you a memo about this earlier in addition to what's in the report. Auckland Transport are online. I just want to acknowledge Chair Richard Leggett, who's with us on the meeting, and also to acknowledge publicly here the good work that's been done in collaboration with Auckland Transport in getting to this point. And the fact of the, as the Mayor said, the Auckland Transport Board having resolved earlier in the week around the delegation, which you're now asked to accept. So to the Chair and Chief Executive Dean and Scott, who are online, you can see there, thank you for your collaboration on this, and I just wanted to record that fact for you at the outset of the discussion. Toby.
Thanks, Phil. Kia ora, councillors, Mr Mayor. So normally the CCO Reform Transition Program provides a monthly update as part of the CE and CFO update at the top of a governing body agenda. Today I've actually got an update integrated with some decision making that we're recommending the governing body take in order to support the continued progress of the program and support its implementation. So those are some decisions around ensuring the functions transferring to council from Eke Panuku Development Auckland can continue to be effectively and efficiently delivered. And so those decisions are around authorising the Auckland Council CE to act on implementing any decisions related to urban regeneration, property management, marina management, and any other activities of Eke Panuku. And they're also around agreeing to include the new Auckland Urban Development Office and the Property Department that we've created through the structural change of that integration, to include them in the delegation to Auckland Council officers of the functions, duties and powers under the Resource Management Act. So that essentially means that they can then do much of the work that Eke Panuku was able to do under that delegation, so lodge a plan change, for example. So it just makes them effective as they come into Auckland Council, so we can keep the momentum of their service. The other decision we have for you today relates to, and Phil just spoke to this, enabling the transfer of a specific strategy and policy functions from Auckland Transport to the Council as part of that package around being prepared for reform and looking for early opportunities ahead of legislative change. So I have an omnibus report for you today, and it's in 3 buckets. There's a update on the reform that we normally provide as part of the CE and CFO update. we have a little bit of information related to the Eke Pānuku functions and making sure the new parts of council can deliver on those. And then we have some discussion around the transport delegation. So I'll just take us through that. And then we're able to take questions. I have to my right Claire Stewart, who's the lead of our transport reform program as part of the CCO reform program. That's one of our work streams. And to my left, I've got Katie Bexley, who's from our public law team, who's supported both the Eke Pānuku delegations piece and the Auckland transport delegations piece. So we're ready for questions, but I'll just do the process intro and then happy to take those later. So if I just move us to a quick reminder of the CCO reform package. Budget Committee, governing body decisions in December last year. They agreed a CCO reform package that looked to realign and reinvigorate the CCO model, strengthen the council's ability to support elected members to make integrated decisions, and ensure that the Auckland Council Group is set up in the best way in order to deliver on the long-term plan investments and its broader vision for Auckland. So that was our goal for the entire program. Then we structured it into 4 work streams. The first work stream is Eke Pānuku and Tātaki and the transfer of the economic development functions of Tātaki and the closure of Eke Pānuku and the transfer of all of its functions into council. We were asked to deliver that by no later than the 1st of July. That's Tuesday next week. And we're happy to confirm that we've put all of the bits of process in place to bring that to effect. So staff who are currently located at Eke Pānuku and Tātaki as part of that transfer, their last day is the 30th of June, and then their first day transitioning within the group at Auckland Council Parent is the Tuesday meeting that deadline. As part of that change, we've designed and delivered an operating model and 3 new departments, and you've had updates about that process along the way. Just a quick reminder, we are creating an Auckland Urban Development Office in the Council's Resilience and Infrastructure Directorate, and that office will serve as Council's urban development front door for large-scale projects and in priority locations. It'll work with investors and developers, iwi, Crown agencies, and the private sector in its work. So that's the Urban Development Office. Then we've also created and established a property department, also in the Resilience and Infrastructure Directorate, that will be responsible for Council's substantial property portfolio, and it will provide strategic leadership and asset management to ensure that the Council has the right settings as it manages property across the group. And the 3rd new department that we've created is the Economic Development Office. That's largely populated with the functions, the economic development functions of Tātaki, and we've also brought in Council's community and social innovation teams and our local economic brokers as well. So that's a new office located in the Group Strategy and Chief Executive Directorate, and that new service will drive inclusive and sustainable economic growth across Auckland. And so we've created those 3 departments in those locations I've just described, and then we've also, in order to support those new functions and improve the overall efficiency at Council, we've undertaken some realignment in areas of finance, group shared services, communications and marketing, chief people office and governance. So essentially that's saying that in addition to creating those new structures, we've used the Auckland Council model and mapped staff to where they're best located in order to get the outcomes for the council. A key theme of the reform and workstream 1 is enabling staff to continue the work that they're doing and making sure they have the right tools and systems and processes and delegations in order to do that. So that brings me to the first bit of decision making here. So what we've done is staff have looked at the Chief Executive's delegation register, and we're looking to make changes in order to give effect to that integration of Eke Pānuku and Tātaki. Essentially, this means that the transferring positions will have the powers that they need under existing delegated authority levels, and where required, we've created those delegated authorities for new positions. So the takeaway there is that staff joining the council in those new departments I've just described will have the delegations they need to act. And then to support that seamless transition, we're recommending that governing body confirm that the existing delegations that sit with Eke Pānuku's board be transferred to the Chief Executive, and then either the Chief Executive or staff under the delegation can act on those delegations that currently sit with Eke Pānuku Development Auckland. and that will give the Chief Executive clear authority to do so. So that's a clear piece of decision making we brought for you today. Just the last bit of wrap up around workstream 1. We've treated this update instead of as a monthly update, we're bringing you an update of the program to July. You'll remember we started in January, and so sort of 5 months later, we've delivered on the change I've just described and the delegations adjustments we're bringing before you today. We've delivered a communications and engagement program, weekly newsletters, intranet content, FAQs, supporting staff through the transition. We have an integrated change and induction program. That'll actually continue post 1 July for 100 days or so as we support staff into their new role, just making sure they have what they need to continue to deliver. We've worked through the allocation of decision making between governing body and local boards for those specific functions, urban regeneration, property, economic development. And we're also noting that the CE will establish a commercial property advisory panel which will have no decision-making powers but will provide advice on major transactions to the general managers of those new departments, the Auckland Urban Development Office and the Property Department, and the CE and Directorate as well. And you'll see that today's resolutions, which were on screen, C notes that the Chief Executive or their delegate will consult with that group where appropriate in accordance with the group's terms of reference. So that's us noting that we will establish that group once it is established in order to delegate those powers that currently sit with Eki Pānuku. We'll make it a condition that the GMs or the director or the CE in exercising those delegations will consult with that advisory group. The ultimate decision maker is the governing body. So just making that clear about what C is today. Appreciating your introduction, Mr. Mayor, that can sound a little internal. We're sort of sorting things out and making the machine work. And you asked me what the public could expect to see as part of those changes. It's a good question. I think the first thing will be that the stakeholders of the Auckland, of Eki Pānuku, I should say currently, and Tātaki, but those functions around urban regeneration, property, economic development and so on, they'll be the first to notice the changes. And we are starting a program of sector engagement in order to work better with our development community. There was the recent Auckland Innovation and Technology Alliance discussions as well in the vein of economic development. And ultimately that needs to be about council being less transactional and less perhaps consultation only happens around legislative processes and more about a relationship and a strategic conversation with the sectors that these departments operate in. We named the Auckland Urban Development Office and the Economic Development Office as offices in order to denote that they were a little more public facing and a little bit more of a front door to those sectors. We also will give comms out to suppliers and stakeholders, tenants in the case of Eki Pānuku, just making sure that they understand what's happening as part of the transition. Iwi engagement continues on the work programs that exist and through existing fora, they migrate across. And then over time, we'll have the iterative process of those three departments bringing their work programs and the areas in which they need strategic direction from governing body to governing body, and then you'll see an evolution of the outcomes that they deliver over time. I appreciate that's a long one, but that's workstream 1, Eki Pānuku and Tātaki. I'll just be cheeky and slip in a personal thank you to Pam Ford at Tātaki, Brenna Waghorn at Eki Pānuku, and Anne-Marie Mohika at Council, who ran a three-pronged leadership team for that work stream, and the many staff that worked in behind them, and just acknowledging that all three of them were in change while we worked through this and got to the transition date next week, and just extending my thanks to everyone who was in change throughout the transition process as well. So that's work stream 1, and it's connected to the decision making that you have on your agenda, B, C, and D. Which actually will have changed with the adjustments up there. It'll be, no it won't, it'll be B, C and D, thank you, transports afterwards, yeah. Okay, so just moving perhaps a little more quickly through the other work streams. Work stream 2, again, thinking back to CCO reform, this work stream and the goals of that program. This work stream is about strengthening the CCO model. It's basically about being a stronger shareholder and thinking about the way the group uses its frameworks to make decisions and act in a coordinated way. You've had updates on some of this material before, so I won't belabor the point. We've worked through the allocation of decision making, as I said, between governing body and local boards for the functions that are transferring. We've looked at group frameworks. Tāmaki Order was recently adopted as a refreshed Māori outcome strategy. There's a group strategic framework that's nearing completion, which will provide the group with clarity about the strategic direction that applies to functions. And as part of that strategic framework, we've identified where strategic direction is required, particularly as it relates to the CCOs or functions that were until next week at CCOs. So I'm thinking here about urban development, for example, or major events and destination strategies that continue to sit, or the functions rather continue to sit at Tātaki. So that's a work stream that's well in train and is about strengthening the way the group makes decisions and acts with strategic coherence. That's work stream 2. Work stream 3, so this is transport, and it's the area we also have decision making today up on the screen. So just a quick tour through where we've been in transport. In December, we were asked for a proposed phased approach to future decision making and opportunities ahead of legislative change. We've worked with AT collaboratively on that, and noting we have Scott, Dean and Richard on the call as well. Thanks again for joining us. And we were looking for, as a group, we were testing opportunities that were aligned with the aims of the CCO reform package and the aims of the legislative change as we understand them. In May, the cabinet paper was released. We didn't learn a great deal from the cabinet paper. It was heavily redacted, but it did confirm that some of the opportunities that we were looking at are aligned with what the central government is thinking. In May, we held a workshop with the governing body on those opportunities that we co-created with AT, and we got a steer on what we should progress and what we should bring to you on the agenda today. We're bringing you 3 opportunities. The first is an Auckland Transport Board delegation of specific strategy and policy functions, and there's a decision there to accept the delegation from AT's board. We're also noting a joint work program for strategy and policy activity between the 2 entities, so that's a progressing way of working for the 2 entities. And lastly, we're noting that Council will appoint some observers to AT's Traffic Control Committee, which is a function associated with the Road Controlling Authority, which has been signalled in the central government reform to come to Council. So officers, both in AT and Council, are recommending that we appoint observers to that committee so that we can understand what that function is as a Council before it likely transfers to Council. So a little bit of process here. Last Thursday, we shared the draft delegation that the AT board was going to consider in a memo from Phil. The Chief Executive attended that meeting, the AT board meeting, where it adopted that delegation. Yesterday, you received an update from Phil that they had done so and that they hadn't changed the delegation. So the takeaway there is the memo you received on Thursday, still in play and still accurate, and it's what we're considering today when we accept the delegation. We will table that memo and pop it in the minutes of this meeting so that that's on there as well. So if I just dive into that opportunity with a little bit more detail, Auckland Transport is a substantive CCO, so it has specific responsibilities in law. It can't delegate the adoption of the RLTP, for instance, but it can delegate the preparation of the RLTP, which is what it does here. And the fact that it's a substantive CCO means that delegation's the appropriate mechanism for them to do that, for AT to do that. And so that's what we brought before you today. So AT board has agreed to delegate the powers, the duties and the responsibilities in relation to the preparation of the RLTP. That's consistent with the governing body's earlier position about council setting policy and strategic direction. The power to approve the RLTP remains with the board, although we do expect that the legislative change will happen before that approval would be required. The legislative change would mean that the Auckland Regional Transport Committee, a new entity created through the legislation, would have responsibility for approving the RLTP. So what this delegation is doing is it's saying council leads the preparation, and it leaves the approval with AT, but we would understand that by the time we need to approve that for 2027, that the legislative change will have happened. The delegation also delegates to a governing body the power to undertake the preliminary work on time of use charging and the Auckland Integrated Transport Plan. So that's the 30-year plan that the Auckland Regional Transport Committee would be responsible for in the legislation. To give effect to those delegations, a small number of AT staff and the budget associated with those staff and the budget associated with the work that they undertake would then follow to council, subject to appropriate employee consultation processes and proper process there. And as I say, the budgets will transfer as well. Similar to Workstream 1, the Eki Panuku and Tātaki process, the role of governing body here is to agree to the transfer of the functions, and then it's for management to work through the kind of mechanisms for transfer and the structure of teams and so on, that we would think through that and keep you updated as we have done through the Eki Panuku and Tātaki changes. And then it's important to say here that the development of the pieces of work that I've just noted there rely heavily on the subject matter expertise of Auckland Transport, and so any staff transfer would also, we would continue to do that and work with AT in order to deliver that. I'm getting the hurry up from Phil, sorry Phil. I'm nearly there. Just want to make sure we've kind of covered that off. Okay, final work stream, group shared services. So just really this is a noting for us. That's a program that pre-existed the CCO reform package. We report through their progress updates. More fulsome reporting is available in Rev and Expenditure. Probably just to say that since January, the Group Shared Services program has got board approval of all the business cases, except for the tech services one, which I understand is tracking for presentation in August. Okay, so there's three buckets. I've given you the kind of update through the work streams, and we have some noting resolutions for you today. Then we're taking some decisions to ensure the functions transferring from Eki Panuku to council can continue to be delivered. And the third bucket is that specific strategy and policy delegation from the board, which we've received and we're asking you to accept today. Okay, I appreciate that's a bit of a 3 chunks in one, but thank you for your time. And we're happy to take questions. Kia ora.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thanks, Toby, for that. That's very good. Can you just remind me, the Auckland Transport Board decision, was that unanimous?
The chair is online and can confirm maybe by nodding, Richard, if you don't want to jump on, but my observation, having been in the room, was
yes, it was. Yes. Yep. And we've been supportive of this piece of work all the way through.
Just think it's important to note that. Thank you.
Councillor Hills has a question.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for the huge amount of work in such a short amount of time. I guess, the way it's written, you know, staff coming in, coming out, that sort of thing, how are we ensuring that, and I guess it's with the changes from Eki Panuku and Tātaki as well, but to a new extent, Auckland Transport, how are we ensuring that staff are looked after, or, you know, how is this happening for people leaving their current agency and moving into a new, and what are the expectations around how you work with those people to get them as a team? It's not just slicing them together and, you know, what does that even look like? Because we're kind of talking about people's actual jobs in the way this is written.
Look, all I think we need to say here is that we're conscious of that fact. We've got to get the right dynamic in the team, that people feel welcomed and incorporated into the work. We've got to get the detail of that sorted shortly, but just very conscious of the issue you're raising, Councillor.
Cool. And once staff or officers are in one I mean, obviously they're all working together anyway, but once they're in a team that has got one title, Auckland Council, obviously, staff culture or direction, or there's not hierarchy. I don't know how this works, but it does feel a bit of we're kind of approving an operational type decision through this, so that's why I'm asking these questions. But how does this look for people when we make these decisions to them?
Well, respectfully, I think just leave it to us to make sure that this transition is managed appropriately in terms of the staff and what have you. The key aspect here is the role that's being performed. The work that requires to happen to support council being enabled to do the direction setting for the future. So that's really the thrust of this.
Okay, and there'll still be, until there is legislation change, there'll still be constant engagement on a bunch of other things to continually improve what we're doing regardless of legislation, right? Is that my understanding? Yeah. Like, it's not ring-fenced to the areas that we're pointing to. It's just, I understand what we're trying to do, like quick wins, easy wins, but it starts to become a little bit fragmented if we don't exactly know what the legislation is on the other side. I guess I'm trying to understand the long-term process if we don't know the full outcomes of what we may or may not be deciding. Or,
well, the long-term scope will be significantly informed by the final legislation, which, as you've observed, is some time away. What I'm confident of, and Dean and I are meeting every week on this, as are the people in both organisations, to make sure it's working. So I'm confident that we've got the right dialogue and relationship around this to make it successful.
Cool. And on each decision or how this actually rolls out in practice to us or to the public, we will be able to see in a linear way, this is the democratic decision. Because I support this direction. We need more decision making that we can be accountable for, because at the moment we point the finger back at AT and say, your fault, not ours, when often So I get where we're going, but how will that look? How will this look? There'll be things that come to us and it just looks like one decision, or like today we'll have to make a decision after a decision, or I'm just trying to understand, like, what do I say to the pub? Not that they are probably asking about these detailed decisions, but I'm trying to understand, this is a very good process, but what does it start to look like as it rolls out? How does it feel different and act differently?
Well, some of this will be further clarified in the fullness of time, to be fair. Just let's be really clear, though, that the proposition in terms of this aspect of the discussion with government, the proposition is for a different type of regional transport committee, supported in a different way with some different outputs in terms of longer term clarity, aligned investment between government and ourselves. So it is not the case that there's going to be a whole lot of transport decision making necessarily coming to a council committee for that higher order territory. Okay, and then there's the complexity of some decision making probably ultimately being with local boards. So that complicates things further in terms of who's going to be in what decision making role. I think for where we are at the moment, we just have to keep working the problem, and the clarity will come with the legislation and with the next level of detail in terms of design for how it operates, and we'll make sure that that's nice and clear for everyone.
And you'll be checking in with all those affected people through the process to get good and bad feedback, I guess, as we go.
Yes, of course. We've got to honour that relationship with our staff and take them positively on the journey. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
With no further questions, Toby, I'll ask you and your team to step back, thanks, and we will go to any debate. Anyone wanting to talk to this? No? Well, has it been moved and seconded? It's been moved and seconded, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We move now to Item 16, asset renewal disposal, and welcome Carl May. Hello, Carl.